The Alberta government has placed a 7-month moratorium on wind and solar projects. It's been very controversial. And one of the impacts is one of the questions is what will be the economic impacts, because apparently there were about $25 billion worth of projects in the development queue. And these are all put on hold. And a number of the companies have said that they will leave the province because of the uncertainty around the industry now. And so I'm going to talk to Will Noel, who's an analyst with Pembina Institute, about a new study called Investment Impact of Alberta's Renewable Energy Moratorium. So welcome to the interview, Will.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, look, give me the broad strokes. What are maybe a brief overview of your study, if you will?
Yeah, of course. So we a little while ago we released a press release that was just doing a quick look at the projects that are going to be impacted by this moratorium, this pause on renewable projects, and it generated a lot of interest. So we did a little bit of a deeper dive after some consultation with industry, and it turns out that our originally conservative look and estimation of the impact was actually a little bit larger. So we've estimated the investments, the municipal taxes, and land lease revenues, as well as the employment impact that this 7-month pause on renewables is going to have.
What were developers telling you about the impact of the government's decision on their investment intentions going forward? Is this going to put a chill on investment in the renewable sector in Alberta?
I think it's really difficult to say in the long run what's going to happen, but what we can say is that there's just really this big feeling of uncertainty. The moratorium, it came kind of really out of nowhere, and there's a lot of large companies that are looking to invest in Alberta or are currently investing in Alberta, and now there's this just feeling of uncertainty around where the industry is going to go. So I think it's just really that feeling of investment uncertainty for a lot of these projects.
Right. We saw yesterday the Alberta Utilities Commission, which is the regulator here, released a letter saying, well, hang on a second, we're going to be modifying our process a little bit. It's not, we'll try to deal with that uncertainty, provide you with some more certainty, and we'll see. And that was, I think, reasonably well received by the developers. But like you say, still uncertain going forward. What was the value of the capital that was going to be invested in the projects that were in the queue?
So our estimate of the projects, of the 118 projects, was, if I'm not mistaken, it was on the order of $30 billion. That's just kind of sitting there now on hold for the next 7 months for the projects that are in the queue.
Right, which is approximately the amount of capital that would go into the oil and gas industry in a year. So we're talking about, this is not insignificant. And how many of those 118 projects would likely have been developed? Because I think it's fair to say that not every project that gets into the queue actually winds up being built.
Yeah, that's a really difficult thing to predict. Of course, as you said, it's very true that we're not totally sure on how many of these projects will go forward. Of course, some of those that are in the later stages, it's probably a little bit more certain. But it's really hard to say, and I think this feeling of uncertainty for projects, that are further along, or even just starting, or any projects that for potential future investments, it's impacting all of these projects in the same way.
Right. What are we talking about in terms of employment? This has been some numbers have been bandied about in the media and on social media. What kind of an estimate did you come up with?
Yeah, so we for all of the projects, if you look at them, we came up with an estimate for wind, solar, and then the solar plus storage of about 24,000 job years, which is a little bit of a confusing metric, but really just simply a job year means a full-time job for one person for a full year, but it could also be the equivalent of 6 months of work full-time for two people.
Gotcha. What kind of jobs are we talking about? Are these all construction jobs, or they're? I mean, I don't know much about solar and wind turbine maintenance and operation, but they seem to be, once you build them, they don't require a lot of that. So is this mainly construction?
I think it would be there'd be a little bit of an upfront spike in jobs in the construction, but also the project development, and then after the project has been energized, you've got monitoring, you've got maintenance, you've got operations, and then ideally after these projects are constructed, new ones that are a little further down in the queue, those would come online, and then you've got more jobs. So it's there's kind of this a constant stream of jobs in an ideal world.
Right. And I suppose this is important because we've seen the number of jobs decline. I think in the last decade, the oil and gas industry has lost something like 48,000 jobs, and a lot of them are out in these rural areas where the wind and solar projects would be developed. So what about, you mentioned solar and storage, and we're seeing that a lot in jurisdictions like the United States, California, Texas, where almost every solar project now has some form of storage attached to it. How many of those were in the queue?
I can't think of an exact number off the top of my head, but we're seeing a really large uptick of projects that are really wanting to attach storage to their renewable resources. I think there's about 1,500 megawatts is the capacity of the storage that will be impacted by this, but I can't remember exactly off the top of my head the number of projects.
Right. My understanding, if I remember correctly, that's 1.5 gigawatts, right?
Yes, yeah, you are correct.
Right. So last year there was a 1 gigawatt of wind and solar built in Alberta. This year, according to the Canadian Renewables Association, Renewable Energy Association, there was supposed to be 2 gigawatts. So assuming that not all of that storage might be built in 2022, it sounds like at least maybe half or a third of all of these projects now come with storage built in.
Yeah, it's becoming increasingly popular, I think, especially as the costs of the battery technologies are going down. And now that the Alberta Electric System Operator is kind of in active participation or active consultation, looking at different ways to incentivize these projects, it's a lot of these developers are starting to tack on sometimes really large batteries. Some of the projects have batteries that are larger than anything that's even online in Alberta at the time, all 5 projects. So,
okay. What about where these are located? I mean, one of the reasons that was advanced by the government for putting the pause on development is that this was going on prime agricultural land, good farmland, and there was a lot of rumblings in rural Alberta about that. But it seems like most of the solar resource in particular, but I guess also the wind, is in southern Alberta, where it's grazing land, it's pasture land. Maybe it might even be almost like it's around Drumheller and places like that. You can't grow anything. It's almost like a desert down there. So were most of the projects on good farmland, prime agricultural land, or were they in this, the less less desirable land?
I think that's something that a lot of these projects that's something that comes up really early on in the talks with the bilateral agreements between the landowners and the project developers. Like you mentioned, a lot of them are going down in southern Alberta, and we're even starting to see some creep up further north. But it's we're trying to put them on where the wind and solar resource is the strongest, but we're also trying to, these projects, we're trying to avoid taking up this high quality land. And like you said, down in the grazing land and the pasture land, I think these, what do they call them, agrovoltaics. There's even kind of this mutual benefit of the grazing land, providing shade and everything for these animals that are grazing in the grass. You know, it's actually beneficial to what they're doing with the land. So.
Well, hopefully the Alberta government will get this sorted out, because this is the kind of development that Alberta needs, and the moratorium certainly sent the wrong message. So, Will, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.